Well, I don't want to be glib because I know how hard it is to be out there trying to make a living and be creative. And there's a lot of messages I could give, but I'm just going to say this. I'm going to say, don't let the propaganda and the marketing steal your innocence. Don't let it mesmerize you. It's a ghost. If you grab it and you get it, it doesn't satisfy. The process, the creative process is much more satisfying. It's very satisfying to see your name, a byline, be on Spotify, all those things, and it's wonderful. But trying to be known and get out there and to have so many likes and so many followers and subscribers, it doesn't satisfy. It doesn't satisfy the way you think it will. So enjoy the creative process. Be thankful every day, grateful every day that you have breath, that you have hands, feet, that you have a sense of being. You have the creative spirit to go for these things. The world needs you. The world needs you. Do not give up your innocence and your hope for that.
Yeah, that's how it used to be too. And then it was just like, it would show names. It would be like Stephanie and then Amy afterwards, like showing like whose dialogue it was. He was saying that's how it used to be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I remember that.
I would say you need also the art of improvisation too, because whenever you go into the interviews at first, you almost think like, I don't really know this person too well. So I feel like as we keep going along, I'm going to try to formulate questions in my head based on like the answers people give me too. So
Sure.
in other words, we're interviewers. We improvise, that sort of thing too. So
That's right.
So that could be at least a nice little touching point in your class subject going forward. So,
Yeah.
But I guess out of all the interviews you have done, I guess, so what was the big lesson, or I guess what was the greatest experience you had with like one of them?
Well, they each had a little like different flavor, you know. Oh golly, I suppose I will go back to my two major Amy Grant articles, cover stories. One was for CCM, and one was for a magazine called Gig, and I think it was in San Francisco. And I liked them the best because, not because she was the biggest star that I interviewed, but I did love her music and I still do, but because of the relationship factor. I loved how relational she was. You know, if you're a relational person, which I am, you want to socialize, you want to know people, you're curious, you want to spend time with people. Even if you're not a big extrovert, you want to be with people. You love that. There are people who don't love that. You know, there are people they're very talented, but they're not very relational. And I don't say that as a put down. I just say that there are a lot of people that's just they have an attitude of like, just the facts, ma'am, or just giving information cut and dried. But Amy was very relational, and we hit it off very well. We hit it off so well. We had such a great conversation. It didn't even feel like an interview. And the story that I wrote about her just turned out so well. I was so pleased with it. We kind of kept in contact a little bit over those next few years. And then another opportunity came up when I found out she was going to be at PNC Arts Center in New Jersey. And that was only like a half hour from me. I thought, oh my goodness, maybe I can interview her again for a different magazine. And I went through all of those steps, and I was able to do that as well. And she brought me back to her trailer behind the Art Center, and she had someone helping her there with her children. I think she only had one child at that time. He was about a year old, and he was in a diaper, and she wasn't dressed yet for the show that was going to be happening in 3 hours. And she had him and she just kind of plunked him. His name was Matt. She plunked him in my arms and said, he's a very likable kid. And I said, yeah, he's adorable. And she went on to do whatever she needed to do. And I played with him for a couple of minutes. It was so relatable and relational. I loved it. And so to answer your question, I think that would be the one I enjoyed the most. But there were many people I interviewed that were fascinating, like Bill Maxwell. Do you know who he is? He's a drummer.
What group is he a part of?
Well, he was a part of, he's been producer for many people and played drums, I believe, for Keith Green, too. I know I'll get dinged for that if I'm wrong, but my husband. But he was a drummer in a jazz band called Koinonia in L.A. back in the day, and a very fine drummer. And I had a telephone interview with him that was just fascinating. Again, he was very relational, but we just had a great music talk. And like the best articles come out of that, you know. I interviewed Abe Laboriel, not Abe Laboriel Jr. Do you know who he is? I don't know if you do. Abe Laboriel is a bass player. And I interviewed him. I forget the magazine I interviewed him for, but I was interviewing him on the phone as well. And I was in New Jersey and he was driving somewhere through the hills and mountains of California. And it was hard to have that conversation because we were in and out a little bit with the cellular signal, right? But it was a fascinating conversation about the relationship between a bass player and a drummer and how you need to lock into each other and how much fun it is when you're really grooving. And plus, he's a Christian, and so we had a lot in common to talk about his faith and my faith. And so that was another fascinating article. Or interview, I should say. I had a lot of them.
Do tell, I would say. The one main thing I was taking after listening to the answer was I definitely struggled with being an introvert too. I don't know. Did you kind of have that problem at first too with being introverted and then kind of working your way through that to kind of interact with people more?
Never.
No? You're pretty extroverted?
When I graduated high school, they said, where are you going to find Stephanie 10 years later? Socializing. I was like, I put the E in extrovert. But so that never bothered me, the interviewing and kind of getting the gumption to talk to people, because I know they're just people. They're stars to us, but they're people just like us. And but it's really only in the last 20 years that I started, like, that introvert side started coming out in me. I know I'm not a true extrovert. I've got an introvert. Everyone has an introvert and extrovert side. It's just which is more dominant. And my extrovert has always been dominant. But if I don't get enough alone time and solitude and reflection now in this last 25 or so years, I'm not good for anybody. So I don't know if you're feeling the opposite. Like, are you becoming more of an extrovert and getting more comfortable with being extroverted, or no?
I think it's still there. I mean, I wouldn't just try waving at people on the street right there, being like, hey, how you doing? That sort of thing too, unless they initiated first, that sort of thing. Definitely when it comes to interviews, I think the problem is it's kind of like what mom would say, don't talk to strangers, that sort of thing. So I think that's kind of an influence on it. So that's probably what brings out the introverted side in a way. So, and
my mother would say the opposite of your mom. It's just so funny how we have, everybody's so different. My mom would say, a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet. So it's like, our background, our mother's voices really shape us, don't they?
Well, I would say it was more like how Forrest Gump would try to interact with people, be like, hey, my name is Forrest Gump, that sort of thing. And then if they introduce and they have at least a good personality, then it's like, okay, we're not strangers anymore, that sort of thing. Or I think the say would be like, you would know whether this person could be a friend of yours or you're going to totally hate them within the first couple of minutes, that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
So, but I guess you also covered about the Christian music scene too. Obviously, you mentioned about a lot of the artists we just talked about right there. So I guess what do you think about it this time, in this day and age too?
Well, there's some really good music out there. Um, and there has been some really good music. I mean, I can just start rattling them off. So many good ones, you know. Um, but I think there's a couple of things. Like when I was your age, probably, I remember thinking, like, why is all Christian music starting to sound like alike? Like, why does everything have the same kind of compression and production value, and like what, you know, and the same kind of lyrics and the same kind of beat? It just seemed that there wasn't enough variety, and it almost seemed like this, it's going to sound harsh, but yeah, 20, 30 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, I remember thinking, where are all the Phil Keggies of the world and Rich Mullins? Like, the music seems to be so squashed these days, and like we're trying to copy the world or something, and that's not creative. So I felt that way a few decades ago. Now I've started to see a little bit of breaking out, it seems. I don't know if it's really my stretching my listening habits, or this is really what's happening, but I love people like Fred Hammond. I don't know if you've ever listened to Black gospel music, but like contemporary Black gospel music, but it's fantastic. Have My Heart and Be Blessed. It's just beautiful music that he is making. And so I think there's some really good things about what we would traditionally call Christian music, or music made by Christians. But I think that there's a general problem in that, like, the music that many Christians make ends up in the church, and it seems more entertaining than concerned with spiritual formation. You know, now I say that carefully because I don't want to appear like, you know, a prune face, you know, we can't have any fun in the church. Let's have fun. Let's clap hands. Let's have fun with each other. But it seems like all of the propaganda and showmanship of the world has ended up in the church, and that doesn't feel right to me. So I don't know if that's the answer you were expecting from me, but so I guess I'm ambivalent. I feel two ways about it. Like, come on, let's keep creating. We're children of the King, who is the great creator, capital C. We should be oozing with creativity. You know, got a lot of juice in there. Let's be really creative. Let's stretch. Let's go beyond, what we think is just going to make money. Because I think a lot of what has happened since the Christian music explosion, really, of the 90s, is that it seems like, oh gosh, I hate to say this, but it just appears like it's so much more about money making and prestige and recognition than it is about the creativity. There, I said it.
No, I think you'd be right too. And unfortunately, I think everyone's kind of a little guilty of having like a little bit of a greed side as well. I know of me, it was more of the Christian metal sort of scene, mainly like Christian thrash metal, because they also came down in the 90s as well. Even though they were sort of mimicking like some of the early artists who had came out with a similar style in like the 80s. But they actually did very well done, like bands like Mortification, Living Sacrifice, to name like at least a couple. I know there's probably plenty in there. I know Stryper, I imagine you probably knew about Stryper as well.
I interviewed Robert Sweet, yeah.
Did you? How was that?
Did you like Stryper?
I at least know the song. I don't think I listened to like a whole lot of the music. I know To Hell with the Devil. That was about it.
Yeah, I interviewed him backstage at the Felt Forum. Sweet. His name is Sweet, Robert Sweet, but he's a sweetheart. I mean, it's just that was an interesting interview too, if you wanted to hear about it. A really crazy interview, honestly.
So yeah, I guess we got some time. I guess
okay.
That's what y'all talk about.
Well, so his representative brought me backstage to his stage door. He was, in jeans and a t-shirt. He, of course, hadn't gotten dressed yet into the whole yellow and black stretchy kind of costumes that they wore. His hair looked like mine. It looked mild and pretty flat. He hadn't done it. Like they were not ready yet. They weren't going to go on for about 2 hours. So we had a nice conversation, and he said, well, I've got to start getting ready, but do you want to check out my drums? I said, yes, I absolutely do. Now, there was a band on stage that was, I think it was called TNT. Did you ever hear that band?
I have not. I at least know a song. It was from AC/DC, to be honest.
It was a thrash metal. Maybe it was called Thunder. I'm not sure, but the music was thunderous. It was really, really heavy metal. And, he said, I said, well, where are your drums? He goes, well, they're on stage. So I said, oh, well, when are they going to take a break? He goes, no, you don't have to wait for that. He goes, just get on stage and you can sit in my throne, and you could, because I needed like the cymbal sizes and the drum sizes, and I needed all that information for Modern Drummer, right? Because, they always would list the person's, all their gear. So I had my little recorder, and I had my pad and this and that. And he goes, come here. And he brings me over to the very edge of the stage. Now, the band is flailing and screaming in front of me. The bass is just going to like break your ears. It was right like 20 feet away from them performing. I saw all their backs as they've got their bass and their guitar and their, I saw the whole, get up here. And he takes my hand and he goes, just step up, sit in the throne there. I said, Robert, there's a concert going on here. I don't want people to see me. And he just started laughing. He goes, they won't see you. They won't see anything behind TNT. I said, are you kidding? He goes, yeah, the lighting is like the way they have the lighting, the audience can't see anything behind them. I said, they can't see your setup and your throne? He goes, no, they can't see it. So I get up there, and I don't know if you've ever seen Robert Cage's gear, but it's Robert Sweet's gear, but it's a cage. Have you ever seen one of those cages where like there's maybe like a foot, 8 inches or 12 inches of a scaffolding around there that you could kind of squeeze around to get into the throne to sit down? It was a little scary, but I was there. I scooted around the drum kit, got in the cage, sat on the throne, and just looked up. Before I could even look at the sizes of the whether it was Paiste or whether it was Pearl drum kit. I honestly, Earl will remember all that. I don't remember that stuff anymore. But before I could even write that stuff down, I looked out and I see this throng of this crowd, like just going nuts over the band. And I couldn't help it. Robert said that they couldn't see me, and I had to believe him. So I just stood up and started playing, like air bass. I started playing air guitar. It's like, what is wrong with me? But I had my good time, and I just sat down then in the throne, and I started writing down 18-inch ride, the hi-hats, the this, the that. And kind of then scooched around back again and went back to the dressing room. He was dressed then. We finished our interview. And then Earl and I watched the concert from backstage. But that was a crazy interview because, I learned a lot from these interviews. I learned about how these big, venues work and what happens backstage and et cetera, et cetera.
I'm going to say that was almost like a Make-A-Wish Foundation moment right there, to be honest. So,
well, I did never think about playing air guitar at the Felt Forum or at Madison Square Garden, but it just kind of came over me.
I remember having a couple beers at air guitar in the Freebird, if you know how that goes. So,
well, I didn't have any beers, but sometimes I just get like a little kid. I don't know, maybe it keeps me young.
I guess so, but that's very awesome too. I guess did you guys stay in touch, or was that the last time you kind of saw him?
Well, that was the last time I saw Robert Sweet. Yeah, they were throwing Bibles out at the audience, but I have kept in touch with a couple of others, lightly. I would never say I'm friends with any of these stars, like close friends, but I've kept in touch. Christmas cards here and there, a few little notes.
That's pretty sweet. So,
yeah,
that's an interesting story. Everyone, let us know in the comments what you think about that too. I really wish we could have filmed that actually. I think Loudwire, they do like these little animes that talk about like funny stories, that sort of thing, but they animate it out just to kind of like or what's the word? Maybe exasperate like their emotions or something like that too, or like make it look silly, that sort of thing too, because it's all animated, so it's not showing. It's a real life example, but it's all animated, that sort of thing. So I think that
Yeah.
would be interesting too. So maybe
Yeah.
like showing her swinging the hair, that sort of thing too, doing like air guitar and that sort of thing.
I probably did a little of that too. I mean, it was just too much fun. It was just too much fun.
I was gonna say, how much did you drink that night?
I am not a drinker.
No.
No, I mean, if I have a glass of wine or a martini here or there once in a while, but I'm not. I didn't have anything to drink that night. I don't even think I had a drink till I was 35. You know.
All right, fair enough.
I don't
So,
know. Look, listen. I really was not a nerd in high school, but if I think back, I think I probably was really kind of geeky because I studied a lot and I didn't drink. But I don't know. I had a lot of friends and I had a lot of fun. I was afraid. I didn't want to get in trouble.
yeah, that was the same way in college too. I mean, I didn't start drinking until legitimately 21. I had like sips here and there whenever either my parents or a friend of mine would introduce me to something, but that was about it.
Yeah.
But I would say geeky in the sense that, I mean, we got the glasses, that sort of thing too. So I thought maybe
Yeah.
this is the first side of a geek right there, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, see, I don't know. I've seen firsthand some people's lives really ruined by drinking too much and or drugs and things like that. And even as a youngster, I saw some things like that. I grew up in the 70s, and so yeah, I know that there's a big drug culture now, but like back then, kids were dying from stuff they were trying. And I had a very strict father, and I couldn't go out at all unless he made me promise, you will not do this, and you will not. I'm like, okay, I won't, Dad. And so I thank God for a strict father, because I didn't like it then, and I missed out on parties that I wanted to go to, but it kept me a little safe. You know what I mean?
Amen to that. So
Yeah.
I can see why. But I guess out of all the Christian groups, I guess you have interviewed or I guess interacted with in some sort of way, would you say there's one that's been your favorite? Got to put her on the hot seat now.
Yeah, because there's like 20 favorites, but are you asking me only the ones I interviewed?
It could either be that or I guess interacted with in any other ways. I don't know if you just like sat down and like did like maybe sort of article writing and they were like there to like, kind of like explain things to you, that sort of thing, or
I don't know. Like, I think of the music that I've loved. My favorites are the ones that have really moved me, like have spoken to my heart and really moved me. People like Phil Keaggy. Early albums like Love Broke Through and What a Day. People like Rich Mullins, and I loved Rich Mullins, even though I didn't interview him ever. I loved him because he was so quirky. Have you ever listened to his music? Our God is an Awesome God, and Sing Your Praise to the Lord, and Step by Step.
I would say sadly I don't think my dad was really into gospel, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Rich Mullins was quirky. He had songs like The Maker of Noses and What Susan Said, but he was so down to earth and real. Those are the kinds of musicians I love to listen to, that kind of authenticity poured out of them, more than like the glitz and stuff. I loved, well, as I said, Phil Keaggy, Amy Grant, Rich Mullins, all those from like the early days. But I don't know that I could put my finger on a favorite. If it's good music, I love it. If it's good music, I'll listen. There's a lot of wimpy, lame music from that era that I don't listen to, and also from this era that I don't listen to. I'm always looking for, and I ask my students to show me. That's one of the things we do in art, music as the art of communication class that I teach, is we listen to music together, we analyze it, we pull it apart, we talk about the lyrics, we talk about the production value. And I always look to them to kind of turn me on to some new artists, and they're faithful. They do that. And I show them some of the best ones from the past, so we get along well.
I think this sort of question it always is like how the memes are on Facebook would say like you can only pick one or you can only pick three. The rest like you disappear. They like have to like fall off. You can only pick like three sort of things. So I can see what you
Yeah.
pick too, but that's at least good choices.
Well, Russ Taff is someone I interviewed a long time ago for CCM magazine. I did like a 7 or maybe it was a 10-page spread on the Bill Gaither trio. I think it was called the trio. No, the Bill Gaither quartet, whatever. Bill Gaither and his gospel people. CCM had asked me if I would do a 25th year anniversary of their band. And Russ Taff was the newest person in that vocal band. And if you've never listened to any of his music, he has an album. It's like smoky and dark is all I can explain it. That is really rich. He just taps into something that's so real. I think it's called Down in the Lowlands. He was working through some of his own angst and his own issues. And it really came out in his music. And I interviewed him and had a really good conversation with him. If you've never listened to his music as a solo artist, I encourage you to do so.
I suppose it could. I actually got a long list of a plethora of artists that I've always told people like I gotta go check them out, that sort of thing too. So
Yeah.
I'll try to make sure, but I'll make sure I message you and let you know how I thought about it too. So
Yeah. Yes.
all right, so we're down to the last couple questions here, but I guess this one I did actually skipped over. Unfortunately, I have to go back to being a writer and a teacher. But is there something you hope to achieve being a writer and a teacher?
I think so. I want to provide hope and light for young people who are looking at our world today and saying, what are we doing? What is going on in this crazy world? With all of the threats of war and nuclear bombs and climate change and COVID, what is there to live for? There's a lot of young people doing that. I want, as a writer and a teacher, to be able to shine a light and give them something to hold on to and let them know that we're all in this together, this kind of crazy existence. We don't know why we're here. Why did God create the earth? Why did he put us here? How is it going to all end? We're all in the same situation. We all have all kinds of uncertainty, but there are things God has given us to hold on to as anchors. And Jesus is one of them. And I want to be able to spend my life person to person, classroom to classroom, reader to reader, to just shed a little light and help everyone remember that love is worth it. There's love in this world. There's love to be found. God is love. And love does conquer all. And I hope that doesn't sound schmaltzy, but I really believe it. And that's why I teach. That's why I write.
You say it's also along the same lines of advice you would give to like other novice writers or trying to take a similar path that you're doing?
I would say to wannabe writers, people who want to take a path, make sure that you have something to give and that you want to give. If you're thinking, maybe this is a way I could make money, or maybe this is something I could do for a living, do something else. Do something else, because it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking how little money a person can make from writing books and writing articles, pouring your heart and soul into it. It's heartbreaking for some who I see who are teachers who pour their life into their students, these young people, and teachers are paid so little in this world not just compared to football players, but business people and all kinds of other people. So if you really want to get into writing, and if you want to do what I'm doing, do it for the reasons that will help you hold on, even if you never make a dime from it. because it's hard to make money in publishing these days. And I don't say that to be discouraging. I say it's even hard for musicians to make money, even very well-known musicians. Unless you're the top writers and musicians, you're not going to make a living from it. You might make some money, you might have some jingle jangle in your pockets, but you're not going to make a living. So find something that you're passionate about and do that. And if it's writing, and if it's, music, or if it's any kind of art, go for it. Do not let it go. But make sure you're passionate about it and you're not doing it for money.
I think sadly the whole thing was like, I need to have some sort of money to like quote pay the man, that sort of thing too. As obviously everybody hates the whole taxes thing too. So unfortunately it ties in with the whole existential thing as well. So I think that's unfortunately some of the struggles we deal with in like today's society and that sort of thing too. So
yeah,
it was pretty deep right there, but I would say that's very good advice.
Well, I think about it this, like St. Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament. I mean, was there anybody during that 100 years besides Jesus that did more to further this beautiful message of the kingdom of God, of the gospel? I don't think so. If there's ever a star of the New Testament, it's Paul, right? But what did he do to make money? He made leather goods. He was a tent maker. He made belts and leather and saddles. Okay? Because he had to live too. So I would say, like, there's no shame in working a job to put a roof over your head so that you can do the thing that you're passionate about. There's no shame in that at all. And so I've heard just some people say, well, I really haven't made it until I can at least make $100,000 a year as a writer, and then I know I'm a professional. That's not true. Mm-mm. Yeah.
Yeah, then it becomes a blind ambition sort of scenario right there. So,
that's right.
Yeah, I get what you mean too. But I guess the other thing too was, and this is actually something we talked about in the interview with me and Lenny, was about social media, that sort of thing too. So how can you utilize it? Because unfortunately, it's really kind of consuming people's lives these days. How can you use it so that it's not dominating your life, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. Put it away.
Entirely, or just like, can you just use it for little bits and pieces here?
No, ditch one or two of them. I mean, our social media, what people have 10 social media platforms, 5. Ditch a few of them. You have Facebook, why do you need Insta? You have Insta, why do you need Twitter, now known as X? If you have Twitter, X, that's what he's calling it now. Well, why have Snap? You don't need everything. So start to wean ourselves off having to have everything, and start at that same time going out on the front porch, or going in the car, or going somewhere for a short 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half hour without your phone. How could we do that? Without our phone. But without our phone, or at least have your phone and don't have all those apps on it. So I think that that's a healthy and wise way to use our social media without just ditching it, because how do you really completely ditch it? It's very hard to completely ditch it when everybody else is on it, and some businesses, like the whole business is situated around social media. So you can't just stop using it, flat out, right?
I would say, like, how do you use it particularly? Do you just use a couple of the apps and then like just kind of promote it here and there?
How do I use it? I don't have Insta. I only have 3. I have LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. I use Facebook so I can see pictures of my grandchildren and hear from my high school friends once in a while. I have LinkedIn because I'm a professional and you're supposed to just be on LinkedIn. I never look at it, And I'm on YouTube because that's the one I like. I like using that for my own vlog, my own show. And I like the fact that YouTube allows kind of conversation with like what you're doing, real. It's not really face to face, but we're seeing each other's expressions and we're having an actual conversation. And I believe that actual conversations are the ways that help people have friendships and relationships and keep from being lonely and isolated. And I think that's one of the biggest dangers of our day is loneliness and isolation. And I do think that part of the problem comes from social media, because we think we're with people because we texted them or we read their email, but we're not really with them. We need physical touch. We need hugs. We need hellos. We need warm smiles. We need human stuff. And we can't afford to give up the human stuff and just give it over to the robots. We can't afford that. We need each other.
Amen. Actually, yeah, you did right. That was one of the articles you actually did give me. It was about talk about loneliness too. And I guess it also touched on your story back then when you were part of the choir in your church.
Yeah.
So powerful works too. And I guess I can also share these down in the description below if anyone wants to read them as well. Some of the articles you had sent to me too. So
yeah, thank you.
No worries. All right. So Stephanie, we're nearing the end of my podcast right here. Just got one more question left. Did you have any questions for me or any final words you want to say before we jump into it?
I do want to say thank you for having me, Brian, and thank you for using your time so well to have a podcast, because it takes energy and time. And you know what kind of energy and time it takes. And I just say bravo. Keep at it. Keep doing it. It's good. It's good stuff. Introducing people to the public, showing folks who come and listen what a conversation sounds like, and helping to open the door for other conversations. Good stuff, brother.
Thank you. All right. And best of luck to Earl too, or as I like to say, the Earl of Bennett. That's his nickname I like to give him. All right. So the final question here, this is what I always like to ask people, and I'm curious to see what yours would be, since you did give a lot of message of hope in the interview we've done throughout this whole entire segment. Let's see. The question goes like this. What sort of message of hope could you give to musicians and people out there as we try to move into more of a post-COVID world?
Well, I don't want to be glib, because I know how hard it is to be out there trying to make a living and be creative. And there's a lot of messages I could give, but I'm just going to say this. I'm going to say, don't let the propaganda and the marketing steal your innocence. Don't let it mesmerize you. It's a ghost. If you grab it and you get it, it doesn't satisfy. The process, the creative process, is much more satisfying. It's very satisfying to see your name, a byline, be on Spotify, all those things, and it's wonderful. But trying to be known and get out there and to have so many likes and so many followers and subscribers, it doesn't satisfy. It doesn't satisfy the way you think it will. So enjoy the creative process. Be thankful every day, grateful every day that you have breath, that you have hands, feet, that you have a sense of being. You have the creative spirit to go for these things. The world needs you. The world needs you. Do not give up your innocence and your hope for that.
Spoken like a true prodigy. Okay. All right. So thank you so much there, Stephanie. And we've reached the end of my podcast right here. Did you have any shout outs or final words you want to say before we officially close?
I'll shout out to my husband. Hey, Hammer. Love you, man. Thank you for introducing me to Brian and all your friends and your community. And I guess I just want to say, God bless you all. God bless you, Brian.
God bless you. And I would like to get on Earl's little live stream, I guess. Is it a live stream, or does he do it like an interview series as well?
He does interviews once in a while. And he has done some live streams. He mostly does that show, Ask Earl Anything. And so people get on his show by sending in questions.
I think he did mention about doing an interview at some point, but I'm going to hold him to it so let's see what happens.
All righty, my friend.
All right, sounds good. All right,
Bye-bye.
Stephanie, you stay safe.
You too.
Stay tuned, y'all.
Bye-bye.